My name is Robert Grigore, registered clinical counselor. And if you want to learn how to define your best life and have the courage to live it, you should be listening to the More Than Corporate podcast with my good friend, Amber Furman.
Welcome to the More Than Corporate podcast, where we discuss finding fulfillment, defining success, and living your best life. There's no roadmap to success, no one-size-fits-all answer to fulfillment. I believe it requires us all to be vulnerable and authentic about what we want to accomplish and have the courage to step out of our comfort zone to chase our dreams. Keep listening to hear stories from inspiring people who make it their mission to live their best life every day. Welcome back to another episode of the More Than Corporate podcast. I am super excited to bring to you the third interview from the PodMax event that I was a part of with Robert Grigore. Robert is a registered clinical counselor, certified EMDR therapist, approved EMDR consultant, published author on EMDR, and the owner and founder of Grigore Consulting. He works with leaders in 3 industries: business, athletics, and film. Robert's purpose for being in this field is to rescue families from the negative beliefs, painful family culture, and trauma that is unconsciously passed down from generation to generation. When each individual family member is no longer in pain and each relationship is healed, the family can experience lasting happiness, love, trust, and will regularly practice deep vulnerability and authenticity. This is the kind of foundational legacy that can influence our societies with purpose and the kind of atmosphere that will welcome the next generations. Robert and I had such an amazing time talking. I'm super excited for you to hear his interview. Really quickly, before we jump into this episode is brought to you by Success Development Solutions and the Define Your Life Mastermind. If you or someone you know has ever said the words, "I'll be happy when," I just need to insert whatever you think is going to make you happy here. Losing weight, working hard, building my career, and then I'll be happy. If you've ever felt like you've done everything you're supposed to do, yet life isn't turning out the way you expected. If it seems like something is missing despite others telling you how successful you are, then the Define Your Life Mastermind is for you. The most powerful question anybody ever asked me is, what does success mean to you? And as I've explored this topic on my podcast and with my coaching clients, it's become clear that most people don't ask and answer this question enough. The Define Your Life Mastermind is designed to help you get clear on what success means, what a well-rounded life looks like, and what your best life feels like. Once you know that, you can build a business that fits into the life that you want and surround yourself with people who give you the courage to step out of your comfort zone to live this vision. If this sounds like something that you or someone you know needs in their life, head over to defineyourlife.morethancorporate.com for more information and to schedule a call to see if we're a good fit to work together. I'm super excited to connect with you and help you reach your goals. And without further ado, let's jump into this interview with Robert. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Amber.
I am so excited. So, little secret, I kind of geek out every time I talk to somebody who actually understands the psychology world, because I like to pretend I understand it from my own personal experiences. But every time I can talk to somebody that just gets the language, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. And I'm so excited for what you can bring to my audience. So what I want to do first of all is just kind of set the scene a little bit and go back to what it was like for you growing up. Where did you grow up and what did you think you were going to be when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah. How long is this segment? How long?
Right?
Okay. Well, and growing up, I came from what I call a copper spoon family. So I had, all the material possessions that I needed. My dad was still is a doctor, and I come from a sort of on his side, lawyers and doctors. And so most of my family are in that sort of higher professional realm. And there was a lot of pressure placed on me as a child to also be a doctor or a lawyer. And really what I wanted to be was an artist. I just wanted to be a comic book artist. I spent every day drawing Spider-Man and Wolverine, and those are my favorite comic book heroes. And I, also being an only child, suffered from feeling like I didn't belong. And I had anxiety and depression. well before I even ever knew what those things were, even before I understood what psychology was. And so I was really in this difficult space, which so many of my clients relate to as well, where there's high expectations and no emotional guidance. So I ended up kind of learning how to manage my own feelings, or I should say, escape from my own feelings through my various early forms of addictions, which was food, TV, video games when they came out, and I was around when the first Nintendo came out, and I really retreated, isolated myself from the world because I didn't feel like I belonged in it. I didn't feel like I was like my peers. I was always picked last in school. I was bullied. My nickname was Short Fat with Glasses. And I felt enormous amounts of pain and didn't really know what to do with it. There was times when I just tried to escape, and by utilizing those particular addictions, it helped me get through the time. But then what happened is it got a little bit, worse, and my addictions kind of upgraded, and I kind of went into drugs and alcohol and sex. And so that's sort of, but anyway, that was the atmosphere that I was really born into, which set the foundation for where I went. So psychology wasn't on the table really at all. I wasn't planning to be a psychotherapist by any means. I was just going to be happy drawing and the rest of my life. That's what I wanted to do. And also I should say, I wanted a band, and I remember playing guitar and singing in my basement, and my parents hated that. So they said, well, you can't make any money playing music, so you better be a lawyer or a doctor. And just to prove them wrong, I ended up being a lead singer in a band. But we didn't really make any money, so I guess they're kind of right. But yeah, so I was very artistic and not really prone to the professional world until quite a bit later.
I love that from a family that thinks that you need to be a doctor or a lawyer, your main choices were artist and songwriter, singer, band, musician, which are probably the two things that every person that wants their children to be successful wants them not to do. So, or financially successful. And I let me put the caveat on that, because I love songwriters and I love music. But I also know that, man, that's a struggle. That is a hustle profession. It's insane. So did you ever go the lawyer doctor path? Like, were you ever on that route, or was psychology, as you started going to college, was psychology kind of where you naturally fit because of your experiences?
I think really what happened was I was so selfish and inward directed because of my pain that I was experiencing. And if you have like a knife in your leg, the last thing you're thinking about is, oh, hey, how can I help that person? It's really, I got to get this knife out right now, and then I can bandage myself up, right? And then I can take care of you. So I had the exact opposite experience, because I was going through my own pain. So I was really just focused on getting out of my own pain. But I also saw how my dad was operating, and he would have patients call him at all hours of the night. They would show up on their doorsteps, they interrupt our dinners. And I thought, well, I just don't want that. I don't want somebody constantly at my doorstep. So I wanted to do everything except for go in that direction. So so that's really where I end up kind of going my own way. And then I fell into psychotherapy through philosophy. I wanted to understand existential. I was an existentialist. I wanted to understand the purpose for life. First of all, why am I here? What the heck is this life thing really about? And why am I in so much pain? How do I get out of that? And then naturally, this started me on a search for my own meaning, and then it kind of led me into psychology, into practicing psychotherapy, to going for my master's, and then actually practicing.
I love that. And I really want to hit on something that you said. I want to talk about two things. First of all, let's go way back to when we first started this conversation. You said something that I think is so important about the fact that this is how you were growing up, and that led to like who you were and what you were going to be. And every time I get an opportunity to talk to somebody about this, I absolutely love it, because people, I don't think, really realize the impact that they have on their children in that 0 to 10 age range, where you kind of think they're so young, I can't hurt them. But you so much can through comments that you make and the way that you grow up and things to that effect. And I would love the actual, or your take on the way that you're raised impacts how you act as an adult.
Oh, I feel it right now as you're speaking, the impact of family. It's from my work now, I'm really understanding that it is not just about even an individual's growing their childhood. It is actually a legacy that's passed down from generation to generation to generation. And I really want to take as much blame off of the table, because I don't think a lot of it's with malice at all. Yes, there are some people out that they make some bad choices, obviously, and you probably can talk more about that from your profession, but or maybe not. But no, it's really the first years are so formative, and it's so important to think about what is the child being born into. For my own childhood, my family atmosphere was about it was kind of strange, because there was, on one hand, very professional. The expectation to be a lawyer or a doctor was there from a young age. And then there was also this, I got this message, well, you can tell us anything. You can tell us anything. And which I love my parents. Thank you. But really I couldn't, they didn't have the abilities to, take me on an emotional journey to understand myself and maybe have a good cry and really kind of find the lessons in that particular pain. And so, but it's not their fault, because they didn't get that from their parents. I'm Eastern European, so my family were Romanian, and my family, came from a lot of famine, a lot of war, and my own personal perspective is you had to shove the emotions down, or else you could die. Right? It wasn't really about, connecting so much with your other humans. It was about, how do I get the next meal? So you are kind of, how you're feeling about something is not exactly as important in that sense as to, get the next, sausage or whatever you can get from the grocery store, or a loaf of bread, which was hard. So that mentality was then passed down to my parents. And, they learned how to kind of stuff the emotions down, how to be successful in whatever they're doing. And that's what I was born into. And this is such the case for so many of my clients who, they had quote unquote good childhood, where they had, the roof over their head, they had the clothes, they had, I, like myself, I got even the car that I wanted to drive was my first car. That's awesome. But I didn't have the emotional guidance that I needed. And that set the foundation for me to not really know how to manage my own emotions. So I had to learn how to shut them off. And I did that with addictions.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that it's not out of malice, because so many times it's not. And even the person that's being the best parent, I mean, this is what's so amazing about this like machine that's sitting in our skull, is that we process everything with our perception of the world, right? So a parent could say something to their child with the best of intentions, and it gets received in a completely different way. And that impacts everything they do until they deal with that by peeling back all of these onions later on in life. So I'm glad that you really mentioned that. The other thing I really wanted to comment on was this idea that we have this great life, because I did as well. I'm in that package with you where I had this really good life. And what that led to for me was a feeling that my struggles weren't as bad as somebody else's, right? Like I can't talk about what I'm going through because there's this person over here who had this awful childhood. And so I have to suppress my feelings and my struggles because it's just life. And that's one of the things that I really had to get over.
I'm so happy that you said that. I learned this as a therapist early on in my career. I used to run a group of men who were survivors of sexual abuse. And I would get every single group, there would be several men who went through tremendous, from my perspective, being assaulted several times. So like, oh, it was only a couple times. Um, that was a couple times. But then for me an individual, I had some of my own experiences, but I get this from so many other clients who, well, I had, nobody beat me up. I wasn't, molested or anything like that as a child. So it really wasn't that bad. But here's the thing, everybody's brain is experiencing their own reality. And for that individual, their pain is perhaps the worst thing they've ever experienced. And so there's no benefit, there's no value to compare your experience with somebody else's experience because they did not have the same background as you. Can't do it.
Yeah, I really, really like the way that you put that. And then also I wanted to comment on, like, you hear those things all the time of, it was only a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I want to comment on how resilient we are as human beings to where we can harden ourselves so much to think that that's not a big deal, because it is a big deal. And by the time we get to sitting in your office, like, I know for me, before I was willing to call a therapist, it was 4 days of panic attacks and anxiety attacks, because in law school, they teach you that emotions are the devil, right? Like, you can't have emotions. So it took me not being able to function. And I would imagine that many of the people that come in your office for the first time are in that, like, bottom point where they just don't have any other choice. And they've hardened themselves so much to say, oh, it was only a couple of times, it's not that bad. We're very resilient, but resilience isn't always our friend.
I completely agree. And this is the mask that many of the clients that I work with, and I tend to work with more with leaders, and it could be any kind of leaders. It could be business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, actors, athletes. It doesn't really matter. I've worked with lawyers before in the past, and everybody's a leader in their own space, leader of their family, leader. And there's a mask that everybody wears, at least most of my clients wear, where it's this sense that I have to just hold it together. I just have to make it through, and it's really not that bad. And these are really just avoidance strategies so that you can survive, which is the brain's primary focus, is to survive. So it's working, quote unquote, I'm going to quote unquote, it's working for a little while, and then it doesn't work anymore. And when it finally doesn't work, life unfortunately starts to really crumble. Relationships fall apart. Like, you experience panic attacks. You might lose your job, or like, you might be acting out and then being ridiculed in the media. Like, there's so many disastrous ways that it can fall apart. And then that's usually now I need some help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there were so many times before that, where, and I know that so many other people have experienced this, where you pick up that phone and you make that appointment, and then your life evens out, right? And so you're like, oh, I don't need to go. See, it's not that bad. And so you cancel. And I probably went through that cycle 400 or 500 times. I was going to say 4 or 5, and I'm like, that is not real. I went through it a lot, where I would be like, okay, I got to talk to somebody. And then, like, I would gain control of my life again. And I'd be like, oh, it's not that bad. And it wasn't until 4 days later, I was like, okay, this is not normal. So I love that we're able to have these types of conversations. And this is something that I'm super passionate about, because I feel like the idea of mental health, just in everyday life, of feelings of anxiety, feelings of panic, have such a stigma that people think that they can't talk about them. And I love the willingness to be authentic and vulnerable, to be able to get that out, to let people know that they're not alone.
I love that. And I share the same appreciation as well. These are really important conversations. And I understand the pain point. A lot of the clients that I have worked with, and I do work with now, say CEO, especially, and I like to think of this as the old paradigm and the new paradigm, because there's the old paradigm of CEO, there's the old paradigm of professional athlete, where if you acknowledge that you are struggling in some way, you're no longer superhuman. you're no longer capable. And then you're going to fear that the board members are going to look at you like, maybe Robert's kind of weak and maybe we need somebody more tough. And that's the very, quote unquote, masculine old warrior mentality of doing business, where everybody needs to like cut each other down and be the last one standing. And that's unfortunately the way it was. But I'm hoping that we're moving into a better trend now where actually admitting that you see a therapist is cool. And it's actually showing that you're emotionally mature, and B, you are really clear. You value seeing where maybe some blind spots are, and then being your best self, because you can't carry a whole organization on your back if you've got two broken legs.
Ooh, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And it's interesting that you say that, because I was just having a conversation last night with a law school friend of mine, and we were talking about how nobody prepared us for what it was really going to be like to be involved in clients' lives. We talk about the law, we talk about the procedure of things, we talk about how to get things done, but we didn't really talk about that emotion that you feel when you have a client's interest of something at stake and you can't fix it, and how you allow yourself to deal with that without letting it take over your entire day. And whether it's in the legal field or whether you're a parent and you're taking care of your kids or whatever you're doing, there's all these emotions around you and all these people that rely on you. And I just feel like we don't spend enough time talking about how to survive that.
That is so powerful. And I can literally feel that the pain point there for you of how you had to go through those experiences, and I'm going to say learn the hard way.
Yeah. So on that aspect, I mean, I'm really careful when I deal with people like yourself that are licensed, because I know that there are fine lines between a podcast and a therapy session. But if you could give a general advice to somebody or a general comment to somebody about steps that they could take to ground themselves when they're trying to kind of, I guess, cleanse that emotional palate, what would you say is a good place for them to start?
Yeah, totally. That's a really good point. And first of all, I think many people's experience when they're dropped into the realities of their position are going to feel much the same. It's like, oh my gosh, now I have to learn how to swim. I was planning to be on a boat and I was going to be the best sailor ever, but holy shit, I have to swim now. It's really, really hard. So number one, just remind yourself of that okay, look, this is a new skill, or I'm picked here for a reason. Or but the biggest thing is we have to start by grounding ourselves in the reality of the present moment, because when any time those anxieties or those fears kick in, you hear this little voice in the back of your mind, which I call an inner critic, and it's saying you're not good enough, or you're a failure, or they're going to see right through you, or XYZ. And that's really old stuff. That's old stuff, old scripts from the past that are working now. And obviously, the real treatment is you got to heal that. You have to go back and you have to work through that stuff. But right away, you have to acknowledge, okay, hold on a second. I am kind of, my motor is smoking right here. I need to get some water on this. I need to calm down. So it's as very simple as just taking some deep breaths, really slow. And that is easy enough. Do that 10 times in a row. Go for a walk, call a friend. You can even hop on. There's so many apps now that we have with our phone. There's one called 2to.resonate, and then there's a PTSD coach, which are great tools that are readily available, and you can just hop on there and say, okay, what am I feeling? Okay, anxious. Okay, what do I do now? And it'll tell you what to do in the present moment. And that's just wonderful, so that you can kind of take the burden of, I have to remember what I'm doing. And once you get grounded, now's the time where you have to do something else. I think that, I tell most people this really important distinction, that whatever you're feeling right now, that is not your fault. That came from your childhood, that came from your parents, that came from their parents and their parents. What However, now is your responsibility to do something about that, to change it.
I love that. Um, I love that so much. So I want to step back for just a minute and talk about something that you said earlier about your journey into the psychotherapy world being trying to figure out your existential why am I here question. And I want to dig into this a little bit because I've never talked about this on the show. And I think it's so powerful because we talk about whys so much, especially in the business world. Start with your why. And I feel like the people that are like me that have to have an answer, I'm very fact based in life, need a clear why. And I have found through going through my own rabbit holes that this is a philosophical question and there is no answer. And I would love for you to talk just a minute about that dangers of that rabbit hole, like the why rabbit hole that you could go down and how to make sure you're not getting stuck in that.
That's a really good question. Deep. And again, how long do we have?
Right? This might have to be a series.
Yeah, totally. For sure. So number one, I think I would have to say that I believe that our why changes over time. But I think that your maybe the latest why that you have maybe in 10 years from now, you might need a different why to get you there first, because you might not be there yet. So think about this moment. What brings you joy? What brings you a feeling of when do you come alive when you talk about that? That's a clue for your why right now. And I think it's so important just to sort of be easy on yourself. If you hold this over, all encompassing, this is my why and this is my why in every kind of, state, situation, it can be really difficult. It can actually weigh on you like a burden. That's not to say that you can't have an overall vision and move in that direction, but you might kind of veer off here and there. And it's okay to be gentle with yourself and allow yourself to kind of move and back and forth. That's just my 2 cents.
I think that that's super powerful. And I really hope that anybody who's listening goes back and kind of listens to that again, because so many times we think that that why is a stable thing. Our purpose is a stable thing. Our definition of success is a stable thing. And like, once we define it, it's going to, we're going to have it forever. And that's just not the way life works. So I love that you brought that up.
Amber, you're also bringing up something else that happens in my sessions so often with my clients is that, but usually when they first come in to see me, they've got this fog over in front of them, and they actually really can't see their why or their original purpose for why maybe they started the business or they got into sports or they want to be an actor, whatever. That it gets clouded with all the responsibilities and the pressures and the sponsorships and all that stuff, where other people's why or other organizations' whys are now placed on the pressures of that individual. And when you have this fog in front of you, it's so difficult to cut through it and to continue going. So what tends to happen is, as we eliminate, and with how I work, very quickly eliminate the fog and all the distress and the negative beliefs and all the traumas and all that stuff. When that stuff's eliminated, the individual's why becomes very clear, generally speaking. Like you find out that, what, I learned a lot from those bad experiences in my life, and now I want to make sure that people don't go through that. But I can do that because I don't have a knife in my leg anymore.
Yeah, that's super, super powerful. So since we mentioned success and we've kind of bounced around it a little bit here, I would love to kind of pick your brain on your definition of success, because it's different for everyone. So for you personally, what does success mean to you?
I think it has certainly changed over time, for sure. But my definition of success is something that I'm now driven to provide my clients with. Ever since I should say I'm a new father at the time of this recording. My son is almost a year old now.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
thank you. When I was holding him in my arms, obviously the first week I was like, wow, I'm a father. This is amazing. And like, holy crap. But after that kind of dissipated and I started to settle in, I got hit with the very, very real reality that person is depending on me for their livelihood. And same as we mentioned earlier, the atmosphere of the family, I am co-creating that atmosphere with my partner. And I want to be able to create a legacy for my son, and we're hoping to have another child as well. But I want to create something that's the most solid foundation for them to grow into, and then to pass on to somebody, to their own children, and so on and so forth. And I want each and every one of my family members that's willing. Obviously, I can't treat my own family, which is a real shame, but it's an ethical violation. But it
It's
would be
probably what
amazing.
keeps you a family too.
Right. But it would be amazing to get all the members aligned, to heal everybody's trauma, and then move into the world without all of the negative baggage from the past, your past, and the generations before you passed. So that to me is the definition of success, where I can create a path for individuals or families to work with me, where they can then say, okay, I have now stopped the negative patterns from the past, and I'm now creating my own future, my own legacy. That to me would be worth, if I did that for one family, it would be worth the price of admission in this lifetime.
I love it. I had an opportunity to talk to somebody one day who said that she was doing a workshop for all of the women in a family, like 4 generations of women. And I was like, oh, God bless you. Like, God bless you for that, because you need wine. So my follow-up question to that, and this is a question that I hadn't really considered until I started this podcast. And as I listened to people's definition of success, I realized that we have these terms that we throw around, success and fulfillment, and they're used kind of interchangeably, and they're not really the same thing. So for you, does success come first followed by fulfillment, or does fulfillment come first followed by success?
I'm a big proponent of the and rather than and or, I think that while fulfilling myself, and I can be successful at the same time, fulfilling my missions. And I think, now as I'm really sitting with it, I'm thinking that, as different avenues for success to arise, I think it's important probably to feel fulfilled as you're doing so, because when you are fulfilled, success is it's easier, opportunities come far easier, and your relationships, your forms far easier, and it's not such a urgent matter that I have to do this X, Y, and Z so that I can finally feel fulfilled. So I think, yeah, I'm probably more towards the fulfillment first, then the success comes as a happy byproduct.
I love it. So I want to ask you, if you had one message or platform that you could stand on, like one thing that you just wish that every one of your clients could understand and take in, what would that be for you?
I think I would go back a little bit to what I said before, that the current distress that you're experiencing doesn't matter how big, how small in your mind, it's all relevant, and it's also not your fault. But it is your responsibility to change it. And I really want to allow the listeners to really allow yourself to just give yourself permission to dream a little bit and think about what would it be like if you could allow all the members in your family to just take the weight off and to just be real, just be authentic, just be real. And it's really, you know, there's so many myths and so many blocks that so many family members might have around therapy, around, you know, dropping that mask that we all sometimes wear. And it is absolutely possible, and it can be much, much, much faster than you might think. So not your fault, but it is your responsibility to do something, and you can only change those who are willing.
I love it. And I want to make a quick comment on that because I think that that's super powerful. And um, just to use an example, my relationship with my family has not always been amazing. And when people ask me how I turned that around, my answer is very similar to what you just said. Like, my relationship with my family got better when I stopped expecting them to do things for me that I should be doing for myself, like loving myself, believing in myself. Like, no matter what they did, it was always wrong because I couldn't believe it. And so this idea of fault and responsibility really hits home to me, because that's when relationships get to flourish. Like, when you take complete responsibility for you, your success, your happiness, your belief in yourself, then you allow a safe space for other people to just be in your life for the reasons that they're meant to be there, rather than feeling like they have to spend all of their energy to make you whole.
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and we're doing this as part of this PodMax event. So we are on this timed schedule, which is probably a good thing because I think I could talk to you for hours about all of these topics, and we might have to make that happen. So with that being said, we're coming towards the end of our time. And what I'd love to do before we wrap up is give everybody an opportunity to get to know you a little bit with a quick random round. Are you okay with that?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All
Lightning
right.
round, right?
Lightning round. And, you know, in all fairness, normally you get a chance to see these questions and you have not had that opportunity. So thanks for being a good sport with me. Um,
My pleasure.
if you could do anything, any profession, other than what you currently do, what would you attempt?
Actor.
Actor. I like it.
I've always wanted to be an actor, but I guess I'm just not so good in front of the camera.
I like it. I
Why
like
we're on
it.
a podcast.
Time travel. If it was possible, where would you go and why?
What makes you think it's not possible?
Good call. Good call. Thanks for calling me out on that.
You know what? I would love to fast forward into the future a couple hundred years, and I want to see where humans, you know, where we go. Are we on a different planet? Are we exploring? Did we manage to save this planet, or did we blow it up? I'm really curious. So I'd like to know that, I think.
I love it. And that's a really good question to ask. Like, is this planet even still here, or did we somehow make it spontaneously combust? As far as content is concerned, do you prefer reading books or listening to audiobooks?
When we're talking books, I prefer reading books, but I like Blinkist. I like the really short, quick. It's right there. It takes me 10 minutes. I can read a book and I'm done. I think I prefer actually watching documentaries. I pick up more from, I'm very visual. So if I can see it, oh, I remember it a lot better.
That's awesome. And I've never thought about that before, but the documentary side of things I could definitely see as being valuable. If you had a book that you recommend to people that you think is important for them in their life or journey, most of the people listening to this are on the entrepreneurial path. What book would you recommend?
For some reason, the book The Alchemist came to my mind. I haven't read that in like a decade probably now, so I probably couldn't quote anything from it. But I think just the idea that things can change and that we can be the ones that can do it is so pivotal.
Yeah, I think that that's so super important. And I think it's something that we all kind of have to wrap our heads around, because up through all of our formative years, we're kind of taught that you go to school and then you go to school again, and then there's something that happens and your life exists. And so the fact that no decision is permanent, I think, is super important. And
Mm-hmm.
that book's actually on my list. There's a few people that have recommended it, so I can't wait to check it out.
Awesome.
Qualities or traits or superpowers, what do you think is the most valuable one that's gotten you through your life so far?
Empathy.
Ooh, that's a good one. And then last, but definitely not least, I'm a music nerd. So I always have to know, what's your pump up song? What gets you moving when you need some motivation?
That's so motivation in, say, getting my body moving. I love Imagine Dragons and whatever it takes. That just gets me going all the time. But in terms of showing up emotionally when I need a pick me up, I love, love, love Jason Mraz.
Okay.
I could just put him on, doesn't matter what song, and I'll find something that just like lifts my soul to the point that I might even cry.
I love it. And then finally, if people want to reach out to you, if they want to connect, learn more about you or what you do, where's the best place for them to track you down?
Best place I would say is my website, grigorecounselling.com. And that's the Canadian spelling with 2 L's. But yeah, that's probably the best place. And I'm sure you'll have a link or something like that for listeners to click on.
I will. We'll throw that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I love these conversations and how deep we can go into some of the things that affect people that we don't even realize are affecting us and kind of that outside perspective. So thank you for getting so vulnerable with that. I know I appreciate it, and so do the listeners.
My absolute pleasure. And I would love to join again and maybe even go deeper. We can take a few hours or days in a series.
Right?
But I would love to do it again for sure.
Absolutely. We'll definitely make that happen. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day.
You too. And to all the listeners as well.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the show. I hope that something that was said resonated with you or provided value to you in one way or another. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on the show. You can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram at Amber Furman. Also, I've created a Facebook community for followers of the show to interact with me and other members of the community. You can find that on Facebook at More Than Corporate. So go ahead and join that group if you'd like to stay up to date on podcast happenings and meet some really cool people. Again, thanks so much for tuning in.